The sounds you're hearing here are rockets fired from the Gaza Strip into Israel. Some people appear to be cheering during the terror attack. On Saturday, in the early morning hours of October 7th, Hamas terrorists fired thousands of rockets into Israel and stormed the security fence. They killed hundreds in nearby villages and at a music festival, and abducted a large number of people. At the time of recording, it's estimated they took 150 hostages, many of them civilians. It's the deadliest attack since the Yom Kippur War 50 years ago. It's been referred to as Israel's 9/11. Israel retaliated with airstrikes and ordered a, quote, complete siege on the Gaza Strip. On Sunday, Israel formally declared war. At the time of recording, Israel's military, the IDF, said more than 1,200 people had been killed in the attack so far. More than 1,000 people were killed in the Gaza Strip, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. Welcome to a special episode of DW's World in Progress. I'm your host, Sarah Steffen. Allow me to start on a personal note, and we'll get to the analysis part just a little later. Just last month, at the beginning of September, I went to Israel with about 20 other journalists to learn more about the geopolitical security situation. We went up close to the Golan Heights in the north, to Ramallah in the Palestinian territories, and to the border with Gaza in the south. That's where I met Tal Shamir, a social psychologist and community coordinator for the Eshkol Regional Council just next to Gaza. He was showing us around there, providing background in a complicated area. He and his family live just a couple of kilometers away from the Gaza Strip. I caught up with him over the phone.
Me and my family right now, we are safe after long 24 hours of war. We've been locked down in our safe room inside our house for about 20 hours. The army took us with armored vehicles and extracted us to safe zone, something like 40 kilometers to the east. And we are now right here, all of our community.
On the day of the surprise attack by terror group Hamas on that Saturday, can you walk us through that day?
We woke up in 6:25 in the morning from multiply bombs and rockets that we never heard. This mountain, huge amount of explosion, non-stop, and there was the alarm going on. We went inside our safe room with our kids. We locked ourselves. First thing we did is to understand where all the family is, because my in-laws live in Ein HaShlosha, which is on the border. Fortunately, 2 days before they went out for a trip to Europe, so they are safe. And my son was in another place about a kilometer from the border in another kibbutz with his friends. He stayed there overnight, my oldest son, and they were under terrorist attack. There were terrorists inside their kibbutz, torching down houses, executing children and women and men, and looting whatever they can, and what they didn't loot, they just burned down. My daughter got messages from a friend calling for help, yelling, "Call the police, call the army. They are in my house. They are trying to break into my safe room. Please help me." And we got a lot of messages like that. And we, hour after hour, we understood that all of us are under this kind of severe attack. We started to understand that a lot of our friends are either killed or kidnapped to Gaza. And we found out that also from our village, 3 people are missing. Nobody could tell what's going on because the army was still fighting a lot of terrorists. And we went out under fire to where the last time we saw that they called from. The last call from them was in 6:30, and it was from the junction that leads to our village. And we took guns. We don't have much. And we went over there in order to understand if they are alive. And we saw an horrible sight of seven people slaughtered. And among them, unfortunately, these 3 people that there was a young woman, 22 years old, another friend of mine, which is like 55 years old, and another young man, 32 years old. We kept on everything like that. We started to understand the situation, and we tried to manage talking with all of our community to understand who is in the house and to tell them to stay there and to stay safe until the army will tell us we can go out or soldiers will come to rescue them. The terrorists tried to breach into our village, and we were only 4 people with guns, but we fought them back, and they went to another place. Unfortunately, over there they massacred people, but then other team took them down. And like that, it went on, and shooting with my kids. 3 of them, they were in a great fear, crying and fear for their friends.
How old are your kids now?
The oldest one is 20 years old, and then I have one 17 and a half, and another one is 14, and another young one is about 9 years old, 9 and a half. And 2 boys, 2 girls, and they were terrified. All the roads were roaming with terrorists, and we couldn't go out. We were not allowed to go out. We waited until 12 at night, like 24 hours, until the army went inside our village, and they managed to open a kind of route to go out. They have extracted us, and then we went on, and I brought my kids to this place, and I went back to extract my son from this kibbutz that was under terrorist attack, and I managed to extract him about 2 in the morning. I took him to the family, and I was mobilized. I was also, the army called me to come and help, so I just grabbed my uniform and I went to do my duty. And we started this kind of war. And it's a war.
Israel has mobilized about 300,000 reservists so far. Tal Shamir is one of them. A month ago, when he took us up close to the border with Gaza, he introduced us to his friend Ofir Liebstein, the president of the regional council in Sha'ar HaNegev. Someone who was actively working on making life better for people in Gaza. He was killed on Saturday.
Ofir he lives in a place called Kfar Aza. Kfar Aza, it's a kibbutz which lies 2 kilometers. No, it's a kilometer from the border with Gaza City, and they were attacked and with dozens of terrorists, Hamas terrorists, and they got shot at. And Ofir he got a phone call from his mother-in-law, which is 85 years old. And she said, there are terrorists coming to my house. Please come and help me. And he went out with his son and his nephew. And he went out to extract his mother-in-law. And the terrorist shot him in the head. They severely wounded his son. His nephew was killed also on spot. And that's Ofir, one of my best friends, one of the optimists, and full of love person, a man of belief, a man of hope, a man that wanted people of Gaza and people of Sha'ar HaNegev live together. And he was assassinated.
Tal Shamir then has to go, and we pick up our conversation hours later when he's driving in his car. He's on his way to an army base.
Ofir Liebstein was a man of peace. Ofir Liebstein was a man of hope. He wanted this place to prosper. He wanted not only his people to prosper. He understood, and he said that if my neighbor, as Gaza, won't be able to drink clean water, to have enough electricity, to have enough economy, I cannot stay here safe. So I'll do everything. They will have good economy, sufficient electricity, and whatever they need. And what they've got now, Ofir's kibbutz, it was a massacre over there. They tore all the houses over there. It looks like a battlefield. It looks like Kherson in Ukraine. It's awful. We have like 10 kibbutzim that were burned almost to the ground. We're talking about one of the kibbutzim that as I see, 60% of the kibbutz was slaughtered or taken in captive. A community of 600 people, and we're talking about less than 200 people stayed alive. And we're not talking about soldiers or people with guns. We're talking about parents. We're talking about old people, 70, 80, 90 years old. We're talking about babies, kids, young people partying.
Tal Shamir speaking to me from Israel. After a short break, we get some insights from a Chatham House analyst how Hamas was able to launch such a surprise attack and catch everyone off guard. All over the world, people are in shock over the terrorist attack on Israel. How could Hamas terrorists launch such a surprise attack? Thousands upon thousands of rockets, terrorists paragliding into Israel to open fire on residents and people at a nearby festival. There was reportedly even a mock Israeli settlement in Gaza used for practice. How did all of that go unnoticed? How is that possible with Israel's advanced tech? I turn to Yossi Mekelberg, a professor of international relations and associate fellow with the Middle East and North Africa program at the independent policy institute Chatham House, based in London.
It seems that it was almost impossible for Israeli, watching from every direction, Gaza and Hamas particularly, that they won't realize that they are training paragliders and people coming from the sea and definitely on the ground, and even if as they start marching towards Israel. But again, it's not only an operational failure of having or not having the information, or whether Hamas misled Israel by apolitically sending different messages to its real intention, or also misinforming who they thought were Israeli informers. But it's the way that Israel perceived Hamas' lack of interest in military confrontation anymore, but only govern Gaza, is probably a large part of it. There are some of what we see, information come from Egypt, says that Egypt actually warned Israel against such an attack. With intelligence, it's not only about the information, it's whether you decide to believe this information or not, how you interpret this information. And as much as I'm sure the fingers will be pointed at the military intelligence and the Shabak, the politicians should take the lion's share of the responsibility for not asking the right question, for creating the framework in which they see Hamas in the way they see it, including facilitated it with money and fuel. And above all, the illusion that you can keep 2 million people blockaded and nothing going to happen. This empowers the most extreme elements in society. Of course, what Hamas did should be condemned outright. But for people is always to look at conflict and think, what are the root causes? What empowers them, moderate the people that want to live in peace and coexistence, and what empowers people that resort to violence, resort to extremism?
The Gaza Strip is tiny, so I'm just having a hard time understanding how they could amass thousands upon thousands of rockets. Because, space is limited. Wouldn't you have seen that through surveillance?
The surveillance is there. Some of the most sophisticated equipment is there, and the fences. It's not just a fence. It's a highly sophisticated electronic fence and blocking the tunnels. The fact that there were not enough troops there is because the working assumption was that Hamas was not interested in this point in military confrontation. Because if you don't base your analysis, you don't process your actions on what you think the intentions at the other side. We know that there are many rockets there because they keep firing rockets, and every time that there is a military confrontation, rockets, it's not the rocket. The rockets are, on this occasion, rockets are the secondary. It's the ground invasion, it's the seas, the gliders, the ability. I look at information that comes. The IDF says that already 1,500 bodies of Hamas militants. So just think how many actually managed to infiltrate inside Israel. This is not, how didn't they detect it? It's the same question that, we all will ask, because again, we all assume that the way that this is a fence that billions of shekels were invested in it. You have soldiers trained in watching with the most sophisticated equipment to watch every move in Gaza, and it failed. So on the face of it, it should not have. That's why we need to investigate it.
Why would Hamas attack now?
Well, we need to understand that they plan it for a long time. This is according, it's not just a decision to launch rockets or a small group of militants crosses the border. When you have something on this scale, it means that they planned it at least a year. So it means that they looked for a moment of doing that. I think we need to look always the root causes. The root causes is unresolving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Within it, there are triggers. And triggers are the relations within the Palestinian political system. The impasse in and having no hope of ending the blockade. Some would argue that also the Palestinians feel neglected by the international community. All what they hear is about how Israel is improving relations with everyone. And they say, let's try to stop it. In my mind, actually, they will achieve probably exactly the opposite. They will just demarginalize themselves. And one of the reasons for that, and again, this is something I can't be 100% sure, but the more I think about it, the more I speak to people, I believe this is the case, is they overachieved, so to speak. They probably wanted to come out with way more limited objectives. Probably capture a few soldiers that they can then... Oh, sorry. That's my life right now.
You were saying that they were overachieving.
I believe so. Again, I'm writing an article right now. This is what are the options? One of the options is that's what they wanted. So then, what did they start to do? Start an Armageddon in the region. I would think Israel will react when they go into a rave party and kill 260 youngsters, or kidnap 3-4 years old. I'm not saying Hamas is always an irrational actor, but even a semi-rational actor won't enter into this vis-a-vis such a strong military power. And even if it's a setback, Israel will still respond now with massive retaliation. So it's hard for me to see that this was the aim on this scale. So they wanted probably something on a much smaller scale that shows that they can go, they cross the border, they can kidnap some soldiers that they negotiate for their own prisoners. then they can kill soldiers. So break this sense of invincibility that Israel is strong enough militarily, diplomatically is doing better and better, and no one actually looks at the Palestinian issue. And as far as the international community, if another 20-30 years the Gazan people will live in these conditions, no one really cares. That's their perception of the situation. There is an element of truth, but if obviously right now, if that's what they thought, they wrote their death warrant from the very beginning. So I think with a more limited operation, they could have, go back and have some psychological victory. They could have some bargaining chip to release their prisoners. Right now, Israel is amassing huge amount of troops on the border, and I won't be surprised in any minute they will cross into Gaza. But in the meantime, I'm dreading the next few days and what will be the retaliation, and if actually there is a capacity in Israel to think about the day after the war.
Now, Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu told residents in Gaza to leave as they will retaliate against Hamas terrorists. But realistically, where should the residents, the innocent families, go? I mean, 2 million people live in that tiny strip. There's not much space. How to avoid the killing of innocent people now?
Even in Netanyahu's kind of the illogical things that he says for a long time right now, this is one of the things that not only hypocritical, it makes no sense whatsoever. They're blockaded. They're nowhere to go. There is a possibility that Egypt would open. Israel is not going to open the border, so they won't accept them. Egypt, maybe they will, maybe they won't. But then you create again a refugee issue inside Egypt. Then they're going to Europe. I don't think many European countries are receiving them with open arms. So this is, I think this is terrible statement by Netanyahu. They have nowhere to go, and already many of them are looking for refuge in UNRWA's schools and other installations, and they're dreading what's going to happen next. And again, as much as I think most of us understand the anger in Israel right now, understand the wish to hit Hamas and hit Hamas badly, that it won't be able to do something like this ever again. It won't justify killing civilians in Gaza. And worse than that, it won't help Israel to coexist in the long term if they kill civilians and again destroy infrastructure that will make the situation in Gaza even worse. I think they need to really plan what's the strategy of this operation, what they want to achieve, how they minimize damage or killing of civilians, damage to what is already poor infrastructure, but immediately come with a plan that will alleviate the misery of Gaza. Obviously, I'm far from being hopeful that this is the kind of discussions that take place right now in the Israeli cabinet.
Is there any chance at peace again?
You asked me to be a prophet, not an analyst. First of all, I think there will be peace one day. It's just as in all other wars, and for us speaking here in Europe, we know that even after the bloodiest of wars come eventually peace. And I think Israelis and Palestinians are not different. The question is only how much more bloodshed will be spilled before people will come to their senses. And that's I don't have an answer. If you ask me, there is a way to reach peace? Yes. If there is a will among many people to reach peace, definitely. How long it will take and whether those who can facilitate for that are ready to invest their energy and political capital in that, so far we haven't seen that. But maybe, just maybe, if there is any silver lining, and I'm stretching it here, if there is any silver lining, that people who wake up understand if there is no peace, that's how it ends. Not to justify what's happening, but if people want to avoid future atrocities, they need to go and sit and negotiate peace, which will be less than ideal, but way better than what we see right now.
But the question is, I mean, I don't really see the time and the space now for people to come together and have rational talks, right? Netanyahu has declared war. The fightings are still going on and will likely get worse in the next couple of days. So I'm personally very pessimistic.
So, we need to take, in my mind, an historical view. And since you are speaking from Germany, we had this conversation in May 1945, and I would tell you that one day Germany and France have open border and share the same currency, you probably will call the psychiatrist and ask me to be examined. I was just in France 2 weeks ago and met many German tourists that take their electric bikes and come to the Loire Valley and having great time, and everyone is very hospitable, and we had some great time there talking to them and exchanging. And look, it happened. And there were people like Monet and Schumann and Adenauer that had the vision of coexistence. If we'll just sink in our own despair and feel sorry for ourselves, it will become the reality. It's self-fulfilled prophecy. If we try to think outside these terms, and people can come together even after the worst of atrocities, and the Second World War is an example of that, then we can build the hope and the belief that it's possible.
That was Yossi Mekelberg, Associate Fellow with the Middle East and North Africa Program at Chatham House, speaking to me from London. That wraps up our show today. Thanks for listening. The studio techs were Jana Stegemann and Michael Springer. For more World in Progress content, go to dw.com/worldinprogress or wherever you get your podcasts. And for more current affairs coverage on Israel, please check out dw.com. I'm Sarah Steffen. Bye for now.